So I went to go see Marvel's new movie, The Eternals. Some of you may have wanted to go see the movie and some of you may have not. And there are some of you that are kind of on the edge of seeing this movie because of all the reviews that it's getting. And if some of you haven't heard, The Eternals is the lowest rated film in the MCU. And that's saying a lot because Thor: The Dark World kept this streak ever since 2013. But whether or not you guys are just curious about the reviews or just curious about why this movie is getting the reviews that it is, I'm here to help. But first, let's check out some reviews. Eternals is an unfocused mess of a story that features a wonderfully diverse cast that has no chemistry. This is without a doubt the worst MCU film to date and the start of a rancid theater experience that makes you want to rethink the whole thing and burn it to the ground. Marvel's bid for a Suicide Squad level bust. At a runtime of 2 hours and 37 minutes, the movie drags at points and doesn't really seem to be going anywhere very fast. Story is bloated and underdeveloped, featuring too many characters and a clumsy plot. Eternals? Not even close. Though, at 2 hours and 37 minutes, it may start to feel like it. God damn. Pacing is off, the constant jumping between past and present doesn't help the flow of the story, and none of the set pieces leap off the screen. Eternals is going to be a divisive movie because it doesn't really work at the end of the day. There's too much exposition, the pacing and the structure are a mess, and the story of love in all its forms gets lost. Keep in mind I'm not reading the full review. I'm sorry to tell you, but this movie is a mess. Eternals makes history as the most diverse superhero movie in terms of race, gender, orientation, age, and abilities, and that's remarkable. But that doesn't change the fact that they're stuck in a story that's dull and predictable. Too many characters, too little plot, too many flashbacks, not enough action, and too much conversation. Okay, now stepping aside from all those reviews, they're pretty much saying that this movie is boring as shit. Now, would I go as far as saying that this movie is boring, per se? No. Would I say that it took a long time to get to the point? Yeah. Now, before I tell you what I think, I do want to say this. Your thoughts and reactions on this movie is going to entirely depend on what you came to see it for. If you're coming to see this movie for a lot of action, you're going to get a decent amount of action. If you're coming to see a good story, you'll get an okay story. Or if you're just trying to see where this fits into the MCU timeline moving forward, then go for it. But me personally, I'm kind of a mix of all. I do love action, but I also do like a good story. The Eternals to me wasn't necessarily a good story, but at the same time, it wasn't a bad story. The concept of the Eternals, it was good. It was interesting, but the way they executed it was not all that great. Now, before the movie did come out, I wasn't too excited to see it. I'm not even gonna lie to you, when the teaser trailer came out for this movie, I was not all that interested. They didn't necessarily make this movie as appealing as they did for all those other MCU films. I didn't feel like I was getting ready to watch a Marvel movie. I felt like I was getting ready to watch another live action Disney princess movie. Now see, I knew that the Eternals existed before the trailer and before the teaser came out, and before they even announced that the Eternals were going to be in the MCU. I knew about them. I didn't read any of their comics, I didn't know any of their characters until now, and to be honest, I wasn't all that intrigued by them either. Now, as for the movie, everybody's pretty much saying that this movie is boring. As far as me saying that the movie is boring is a little bit of a stretch, but it is kind of appropriate because of the amount of characters that they have. A lot of people in the reviews are saying that there are too many characters and there's too much plot, which in some cases are true. What Marvel's trying to do is that they're trying to introduce like 10 new people into the MCU, and honestly, that's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with, it's a lot to engage with. That's like throwing all the Avengers into one movie and then we would have to keep up with their backstory and what's currently happening and what did happen. That's pretty much where this movie is. The movie will show you how the Eternals came to be, you know, what they did, what they experienced on their own terms, and basically a story of their own, each of them. In terms of being predictable, in a way, this movie was predictable to me. Keep in mind, I had no idea what this movie was about. I didn't even know anything about the Eternals until now. But you know, just like any movie, as it's starting to progress, kind of like internally thinking, okay, well, this could happen next, or this is going to happen next. One particular thing that I knew happened in the movie, and it ended up happening. So yeah, in a way, this movie is somewhat predictable. Now, honestly, as a movie, I would say that there was a lot to cram into this movie. But with that being said, I feel like this movie would have been a lot better if it was split up into 2 parts, or it could have been a perfect opportunity to make a Disney Plus series, because it literally is so much that you can't just fit it all into one movie. I would kind of compare that to how they did the Last Airbender movie. We don't like talking about that movie. It's kind of like the Last Airbender movie where they try to cram like the entirety of season 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender into one movie. It just doesn't work. I do feel like this movie could have been a lot better if it wasn't so jam-packed with everything. I wish I got to engage with the characters a little bit more, just so I can know a little bit more about them, because I mean, they did briefly explain like who they were. I'm telling you guys right now, if the Eternals was a Disney Plus series, it probably would have done a lot better than a movie. So with all that being said, I'm not gonna say that the movie was bad. I'm just gonna say that the movie wasn't that great. Going into this movie, I wasn't gonna give it like an Avengers level amount of excitement. Because like I said before, I wasn't excited to see this movie. I even told myself before I saw this movie when the trailers were out that this doesn't look like a movie that I would pay for. And after seeing it, I still wouldn't pay for it. Don't let everybody tell you that this movie was like god awful, because there's been worse movies out there. Plus, this movie did give me a lot more questions than I had before. Marvel is going into a direction where they're trying to introduce the multiverse. They're trying to show all these amazing things that are about to happen, but then they kind of shove this movie in the way. And it kind of leaves me with more questions like, what relevance did this movie have to do with everything else that just happened? They jumped from the concept of the multiverse to a concept of godlike superheroes doing godlike things, if that makes sense. By the end of the movie, it just had me more confused, if anything. Honestly, that may be a good thing, and I know that's the point of some of these movies. You're supposed to ask questions about it, but at the same time, they kind of give you like somewhat of a hint as to, you know, what's gonna happen next. This movie was not so clear on that. It didn't feel like a Marvel movie, it kind of felt like just a movie on its own. I feel like they just made this story and made these characters just to show that they exist. Like I said at the beginning, it entirely depends on what you're coming to see the movie for. I would say don't go see the movie if you're expecting a lot of action. I would say go see the movie if you're curious as to where this fits on the MCU timeline. If you're just curious about the story in general, I mean, go for it. Nobody could really tell you to see a movie or not, because at the end of the day, the only person's opinion that matters is your own. But let me know what you guys think. Some of you may like the movie, some of you may not, and I don't blame you. Don't let all these critics or even me affect your reason for seeing the movie. And to be so honest, I feel like the critics were just kind of dragging things out with this movie. The movie wasn't terrible or unimpressive. It had its flaws, but to go as far as saying that this movie is awful, it's just going a little bit too far. But thank you for watching. You can like and subscribe now. I'll most likely be putting out a video of my complete thoughts, because there are a lot of things that I want to talk about regarding this movie. So in the future, there may or may not be a spoiler review. But you know, I'll let you know. But in the meantime, go watch Eternals and then come back to this video and tell me what you think. I would love to hear it. Bro, behind you, Spider-Man! Make sure to share, fellas.
What's in here? Hey yo!
Ooh, say less! Bro, I've always wanted a bed.
No way!
No! What is that? What is that?